Welcome to a special edition of Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got a treat today. Just 83 miles outside of Las Vegas is an area that has movies been made about it, documentaries been made about it. I have been fascinated with it my entire life because my entire life that area has existed. People wonder what is going on. We have the foremost expert on Area 51, Joerg Arnu. Dreamlandresorts.com is the website. It's a fascinating website. Please go on it, check it out. You can go down a rabbit hole and find so many wonderful treasures in this. But Mr. Joerg Arnu is here with us. Joerg, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on your show. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, York. Thank
Wait.
you, York, for joining us here. John discovered an article that was printed about you a few months back, right after your homes were raided by the FBI. There, he said, "Man, this great guy would be great to get on a podcast." So I went on your website, tried to track you down. Then we finally got lucky and got a hold of you, and you consented to come on. But it's a thrill to me, and I know to my broadcast partner John over there, because he's really fascinated by this kind of stuff, as you'll learn here a little bit later on in the interview. But thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for your interest in my little predicament here with the FBI and in my Area 51 research. I can tell you, I can talk for hours and hours about Area 51. I can tell you more than you ever wanted to know about the base.
Well, let's start learning. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in Area 51. And we discussed before we came on air, Germany, and if there's anything similar to that over in Germany, in your motherland.
Yeah, I got to go way back really to my childhood when I have memories of myself standing in Hanover at the airport at the air show, just standing at the fence line and admiring the military displays of aviation, watching the Harrier and other military aviation wonders. They were miracles to me, these aircraft, and I was fascinated by them. All my life after that, I've been fascinated by military aviation. Growing up in Germany, I've always had a dream of one day coming to America, living in America. At age 33, being a software developer, I moved to San Francisco, Silicon Valley. For software developers, it was really easy to find a job there. So I ended up in 2002, I believe, becoming a US citizen. I'm American by choice. So I want to say that right up front. I am not against America. I'm not a spy. Anything I do on my website is in admiration, not in trying to spy on America. So
Yeah,
anyway, back to my.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. Please go ahead.
I keep rambling on and on
No,
about.
no.
Um, when I After I moved to San Francisco, I realized that, hey, Area 51 is something that you don't only see in movies. It's an actual place. You can go there. You can go out to the desert and you can watch the perimeter of the base. You can visit it. So I have to do this. I have to see Area 51. So on the day after Christmas in 1998, I came to the perimeter of Area 51, like a lot of other tourists, did my trek down the gate to the gate, snapped some photos, and quickly got the heck out of there because I didn't know what the security was going to do to me. I saw them up on the hill and I saw cameras watching me, and it was really spooky. You're in the middle of the desert, you're in the middle of nowhere, and still there's all this stuff watching you and what's going on there. So, okay, my interest was piqued. And then on top of that, I discovered the desert for myself. I had never really experienced the desert. So I said, okay, I got to come back here. Uh, it ended up being kind of what worked in my favor. I was laid off in the next year, or rather, I was given the choice to move to Chicago or to take a package. I didn't want to go to Chicago, so I took the package. I packed up my SUV and I came up here to Area 51 to start my research. And the more questions I was able to answer, the more questions I came up with. And before I knew it, I figured, okay, I got to share all this with the world. There's no real good information about Area 51 out there. So I'm going to put a little website up and put my stuff on there and see if anybody wants to read it, if anybody's interested. Well, it took off like you wouldn't believe it.
Wow.
There was all these people that had already done research into Area 51, and they were just waiting for a point to connect. And my website, luckily, miraculously became this focal point for everybody to flock to and to exchange information. I have a discussion forum on the website. So it became this focal point for everybody who was interested in Area 51. And it's been like that for the last 25 years.
Wow.
Your website, dreamlandresorts.com, it really is a melting pot of people that want to come in, that want to talk about Area 51 and what they believe or what they've seen or what they want to know. And to your defense, you're correct. You took the side when they were talking about storming Area 51, and the government obviously did not want that to happen. You took the side of the government and said, hey, this is not what you want to do, and you don't put up classified information. So it's not, you're not the guy that is out there to try to expose something. You're just like us. You want to know what's going on at Area 51, stuff that is not hurting the U.S. government, because it's such a fantastic place and so much mystery surrounds that place. Has it changed much as far as the security perimeter when you first went there as a software developer, just getting laid off, to now?
It has changed. I've learned a lot about Area 51 in 25 years, as you might imagine, but it also has changed. Especially the Storm Area 51 event has changed how Area 51 reacts. It used to be that every tourist would go down to Groom Lake Road. There's a gate at the end of Groom Lake Road into Area 51. Everybody would go down there, take their picture, go home, and that is it. And then all of a sudden, that Storm Area 51 event put Area 51 on the map. And it put the back gate on the map. That used to be the back gate here by Rachel. It used to be a very nondescript country gate. There was a gate across the road and like a little guard shack and a cattle fence, and that was it. All very nondescript. Few people even knew that it was a gate to Area 51. After the Storm Area 51 event, that was where everybody went. So that gate has been beefed up in security. You wouldn't even believe it. I mean, there's photos on my website what that gate looked like in 98. And there's photos on the website what it looks like now.
Have you ever worked your way inside Area 51 to any of the buildings?
No, I have not, and I never would.
I never would.
We'll probably talk about the whole FBI story in a little bit. That was one thing that they were trying to they were asking me leading questions, and that was one thing they were trying to lead me to admit, which I've never done. Have I ever flown my drone into Area 51? Have I ever been inside Area 51? No, I have not, and I never will, because when you, as a tourist, visit the gate of Area 51, it all looks, well, there's a security up on the hill, there's some cameras watching you, no big deal. But make no mistake, you step 1 foot over the boundary and everything changes. So it is very serious. The
videos you see where somebody steps over and all these military type vehicles storm you, that's an actual fact.
That is an actual fact. And there's actually a story, there's a YouTube video even that you can watch of a tour guide out of Las Vegas. There's a tour company in Las Vegas that does regular tours out here. They bring tourists out to the perimeter and then, stop at the little alien and so forth. That tour guide at one point apparently got sidetracked talking to his passengers, and he blew right past the gate.
Wow.
The gate was open, he blew right past it. And before he even made it to the guard shack, about a half a mile down the road, they had a truck behind him, they had a truck in front of him, and he was not going anywhere. You can watch it on YouTube. It's hilarious when you see that. I mean, he had like an in-cabin video of the tourists, and it's hilarious. At the moment when he realized, oh no, I
Yeah.
blew past the signs. I mean, he's just
Imagine that they had to be flipping out. I mean, there comes the military with all their might after you.
it's unbelievable. I mean, they sorted it out. I think they were even foreign tourists, so they all got a slap on the wrist. But the reaction was very prompt and very forceful until they realized, okay, he just made a mistake. And there's all kinds of videos out there of people trying to breach the perimeter. It's not going to happen. They have sensors on public land picking you up. They know long before you get to the gate, they know that you're coming. And there's also sensors inside the boundary. Uh, they know you're coming, and
They're
that's
ready.
another thing.
And one thing is they have sensors on public land outside of the perimeter, right?
That's correct. That is correct.
So they know if you're heading that direction.
Yes, they know that you're coming, and they know from the sequence how you trip the sensors, how fast you're going, which direction you're going. In fact, I discovered some of these sensors a number of years ago, and I dug some of them up, took them apart in full view of the security. I figured, okay, if they don't want me to do this, they're going to say something, and they just sat there and watched us.
Wow.
There's photos on my website of these sensors. They are to this day still in use. I can still pick up those frequencies. I don't mess with them anymore. I got a little slap on the wrist. This was way back in 2003. There was a little slap on the wrist that got my attention, and I don't mess with these things anymore, but I still know how to find them. They are buried in the ground. I mean, they are next to the road. And all you see when you look at my website under security and security sensors, there's a little wire sticking out of the ground that looks just like a piece of grass, and that is the antenna. Everything else is buried. And yes, they will pick you up. They know how fast you're going, which direction you're going.
Wow.
And another thing people don't realize is it is not like in the X-Files where Mulder jumps over the fence and he is right there in the heart of Area 51. You make it past the perimeter and you're still looking at 25 miles of desert before you even get to Area 51.
Right.
And so how severe was the slap on the wrist? He said, or don't do this anymore, or what was the penalty?
Yeah, back then, this was in 2003, I believe. I did this with a friend of mine. He lived in Rachel, and his home was searched while he was absent. And a few days later, I got a phone call at work that they wanted to talk to me about these sensors. I told them, okay, let's meet at my house after work. I can't really talk right now. So after work, I had an attorney present, and he talked to the FBI. I never even talked to them. And basically, he assured them that I'm going to leave these things alone. It was a one-off thing, and
you did not have to return the sensor.
Oh, we never stole any.
Okay, yeah.
That is one thing that they claimed. I guess we damaged or we stole one. We didn't damage anything.
Yeah.
Put them back together. I studied electrical engineering, so I know what I'm doing with electrical components.
Right.
We would never steal one or damage one. They were all perfectly functional after we reburied them. But that was, I guess towards my friend, they claimed that he had either stolen or damaged one.
Yeah.
No, we never did. And I just basically said, okay, message received. I'm going to leave him alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of stealing, because I was looking at the history of the Area 51, which is a huge area when you're talking to Nellis Air Force Base, all of the Nevada test site, all of the different places that are around it, because it's kind of included all of that when people look at it, say Area 51, kind of assume the entire place. 89,000 acres was what I read, was that the U.S. government, not about stealing, took that land apparently illegally, right, to create this Area 51 on a public land.
That is correct.
That's what I read. So you read on the internet, it's got to be true, right? I mean,
no, you're absolutely correct. There's actually several instances where they expanded the base. They originally going back to the 1950s when they first founded the base for the spy plane U-2 and A-12. They needed a place to test those spy planes in secrecy. So Area 51 was born as a temporary place in at the south end of Groom Lake. And then, they realized, hey, this is such a perfect place. It's surrounded by mountains. It is a restricted area inside an already restricted area, which was back then the atomic testing site, Nevada test site. So they had all the infrastructure at the test site already to develop Area 51. It was a perfect place. So it became a permanent fixture, and land was withdrawn. That included part of Groom Lake, but not all of Groom Lake. So up until 1984, you could still go up to the north end of Groom Lake, look right over the dry lake bed, and see Area 51. 1984, they took more land, and I believe that is the land withdrawal that you're talking about.
I believe that's right. Yeah. Yes, it was the 1980s. That's correct. Yeah.
Including most of the Groom Mountain Range and some, of course, the north end of Groom Lake and Emigrant Valley. And they still missed a couple of mountaintops or hilltops that people could still go up to and see Area 51 from 12 miles away. Those were known as White Sides and Freedom Ridge. So in 1995, they realized, or they quickly realized that in 1995, they withdrew those two mountaintops. They extended the boundary a little bit to include Freedom Ridge and White Sides. Another, I think, 4,000 acres of land that they withdrew. And now you got to go all the way back to Tikaboo Peak, 26 miles away, if you want to see Area 51. So it has expanded several times, probably as missions and as projects required more secrecy.
And what was the illegality of it? Was it that they were taking land that was public land and turning it into government land? Was what the allegation was, that it was the illegality of taking that land?
Well, the 1984 withdrawal, I don't think anybody really, not a lot of people knew about Area 51 on the outside. So nobody really cared much about that withdrawal. That was a huge chunk of land, but nobody really cared about that. And then when they took the land in 1995, by that time, Bob Lazar had already come out with his story and Area 51 was on the map. So they took I think it was just under 4,000 acres. 4,000 acres was a number that if you do more than 4,000 acres, you have to go through a lot of more hoops. Right. And withdrawing less than 4,000 acres, it was a lot easier for them to take that land. Of course, there were protests, and they can, if they claim that's in operational necessity, then they pretty much get the land. Even there's a mine on the north end of Groom Lake in the Groom Mountains. The mine was operated by a family that had been mining that area for over a century, I believe. And even they were chased off of their land. The mine was eventually taken by eminent domain. The people were compensated far less than the land was worth. I think one of their ancestors was actually buried there, and even they were chased off of their land, and the land was taken away, all in the name of operational security.
Right.
And, we don't have a problem with security. We know that Area 51 is secret because they work on stuff that gives our country an advantage over our adversaries in a potential conflict. And of course, we can't let them know what we have. No problem with that. But if you have such an amount of secrecy going on, there's always a potential for abuse. And I think that's what we're seeing at Area 51. They just take it too far.
Right. You mentioned the start of Area 51, and we want to talk to you about the U-2, the A-12, the F-117, and all the great technology, what's going on now, the Russian radar sites that I've seen you talk about in videos. But I want to ask you about a little bit about the conspiracy side of it, because in 1953, in May, they had the Kingman, Arizona UFO crash, supposedly of the allegation, and 40 scientists apparently disembarked from Phoenix to go up to Kingman, and they brought what they claim was the body back to Area 51. An alien named J-Rod. For those that are listening, there are people. Mr. Bill Uhouse has said he's talked to J-Rod, actually spoke with him. They claim that was the reason that Area 51 was built. I don't buy that, but
I do.
I do want to ask you, what do you think happened in Kingman, Arizona in 1953 with those scientists and the wreck that was there? Do you have any hypothesis on that?
To be honest with you, I don't really follow the UFO community much. That is not my interest. My interest is military aviation. I have never seen anything out here that I couldn't, after some giving it some thought, that I couldn't explain. I'm a skeptic. I believe that there's somewhere out there's civilizations. I have a hard time believing that they would actually, if they can make it to Earth, if they have the technology to make it here, I have a hard time believing that they would even be interested in us, interested enough to, fly around Earth in their UFOs on a regular basis. I'm thinking more along the lines of, if they are so advanced that they can visit us, they probably put up a big sign out in space. Don't worry, don't bother these people. They're crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
And one thing I saw you discuss was very interesting was a lot of times that Area 51 could actually help perpetuate this myth of disinformation, put stuff up there. They've done that before of lights. There's actual projectiles. You talked about a plasma cannon might be something that actually could project not only in radar systems, but actually to the naked eye that you see something that is not actually there. So that is part of it, that Area 51, a lot of this could be disinformation actually from Area 51, not just mistaken looking at something you don't recognize and claiming it's a UFO.
That's correct. Back in the 1950s, some of my friends have worked in Area 51 back in the 1950s and 60s. They are, of course, up there in age, and there's an organization of these gentlemen that I am an associate member. They called themselves the Road Runners. And they tell me that even back then, they would perpetuate that myth because, you have these A-12 flying way up there, and commercial airline pilots see them up there. What is that? There's nothing that, according to what they knew, there's nothing that can fly that high. So it's got to be a UFO. So this UFO myth has been propagated by Area 51. And yes, they have put light shows on to propagate and to further this whole UFO myth. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is I don't know of any UFOs at Area 51. I have never been in there, so I can't say for a fact. I can say in 25 years, I have never seen a UFO. I have seen strange lights, and I have seen.
Has anybody ever presented you any evidence that there's things living in there that's not from this planet?
Well, yes, they have, but it is, for the most part, it is somewhat. It is hard to substantiate. It's a hearsay. Right. Well, I saw this, but I don't have any video. For the most part, yes, I've heard many of these stories, and for the most part, to me, they are inconclusive because I just don't have anything to substantiate.
Back them up. Yeah.
One story that I can say for myself, that I had a heartfelt UFO sighting for about 2 seconds. Very early on in my camping out here in the area. At night, I'm camped out near the highway, and I'm looking in the sky, and I'm seeing what appeared to me like a huge disc with orange glowing lights all around it. I mean, huge, larger than the moon or anything hovering over the mountains. And I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, "Oh my God, it's all true. It's a UFO." Until I realized it is military activity. This whole area is also a military operations area.
Yeah.
And what I saw was, they call them flares. It's basically fireworks that an aircraft that is being chased deploys to divert heat-seeking missiles. And at the time, they fly an evasive maneuver, flying a curve. So you see these very bright orange lights in the sky in a semicircle. And that's what I saw. And the eye fills in the blanks, and you see
Yeah.
it's
And what a lot of people don't realize in that area you're talking about, it's out in the middle of nowhere. The skies are just crystal clear, and you can see constellations that like you can't see in the city. So some people go out there that's never experienced that bright sky like that. They look up and they no telling what they can see, and like you say, your mind fills in the blanks there.
That's correct. I mean, we have tourists come out here, especially young kids, and they look up and what is that in the sky? What is that cloud in the sky? That's the Milky Way. They've never seen the
Hmm.
Milky Way, and you see it crystal clear in the night skies here. We do a lot of night watching, and it's just absolutely, like you say, it's absolutely amazing what you see. You see shooting stars here that are spectacular,
Right,
and that can very easily be misinterpreted as something not from this world.
right.
The A12 was developed there, and that was the follow up to the U2, right? That was the one that after the U2, I guess had gotten shot down in Russia. You realized there was some compromising on that, and then so you developed the A12. They took was that was there any problem with that as far as it traveled at Mach 3? As far as sonic booms or developing that in the desert or was it far enough away that you didn't have that issue?
It was tucked away at Groom Lake, and they could launch it pretty much. There was nobody around here. This valley was completely uninhabited, so they could fly it in total secrecy. Of course, they had their setbacks during the program, and one of the test flights or one of the flights crashed. The pilot ran out of fuel, and it crashed. But for the most part, they were able to test this project in total secrecy at Area 51, and it was later operational out of Okinawa, Japan, where they flew missions mostly over China. I don't. It was originally designed to fly missions over Russia, but by the time the A12 was operational, they started having satellites, and China and Russia had the capabilities of detecting them. So there was very few missions. I think there's probably less than 50 missions that were flown operational, and so that it was a tremendous aircraft that was made obsolete by a new technology. Not obsolete, but some of the mission went away because new technology was able to better do these missions.
And was that the satellite spy satellites that they developed that you did no longer had to have this high flying high altitude plane traveling at Mach 3, right?
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. It's Mach 3 is really, a lot of people don't realize when you fly Mach 3, that thing heats up like you wouldn't believe it because of atmospheric friction. So they had problems with leaks on that aircraft. The aircraft expands and contracts by several inches just due to heating. So you have all kinds of sealant problems. I hear that aircraft, when it was sitting on the ground and being refueled, it was leaking like crazy because the seals hadn't expanded to the point where it was operational. So it had to actually take off, and then first thing once it was airborne, had to be refueled. So it was a very cutting edge technology back in the days, and they had problems with the engines. They had what they call unstarts, basically the engine flaming out, and then they had to relight the engine in mid-flight. And if you're flying at Mach 3 and all of a sudden one of the two engines on either side of the aircraft, one of the two engines quits, you're getting whipped around in one direction, and it's enough to knock you unconscious if you're not careful.
How do they Area 51? How do they handle the spy satellites? Is there a way to block what's going on? Because you can see so much from these things. Is there a way that they have technology they have to block these?
Yeah, it's an increasing problem for them, and they used to have, back in the days when my friends still worked there, they literally had schedules, and it was like, okay, in 10 minutes the spy satellite is coming over. We got to get everything down in the hangars. And then once the spy satellite was gone, okay, let's get it back out of the hangars, and let's continue with our testing. I can only imagine what kind of a headache that is these days,
Yeah,
where there's
yeah.
almost all the time satellites overhead. And you can go to Google Earth and you can get super clear pictures of Area 51, where you can actually see, not only you can see cars, but you can actually determine what model that
Wow.
car is. They are
Wow.
so precise. And I can only imagine the headache that they have to go through to hide everything. They build, a lot of people say there's underground facilities, underground hangars. In my opinion, there's no need for that. They just build a regular hangar on top of the ground. And in fact, when you look at Google Earth, a new hangar is being built at Area 51 every 2 years. So Area 51 has been around for 70 years now. And when you count the hangars, there's close to 40 hangars at Area 51. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean I never thought about that. How,
Yeah.
if you're going to bury them underground, you can just put them in a roof over them.
Yeah.
It's pretty much the exact same thing
yeah, just put a roof over it. And there's actually two large roofs that have just been built at Area 51 a couple of years ago that we are pretty certain are for a new project known as Next Generation Air Dominance Project, NGAD. I'm sure you came across that at some point.
Yes.
That is the cutting edge technology right now. They don't want us to see. So what do? They just take, a large chunk, several acres of airfield, and they just build roof over it. So satellites can't see it, and they can test under that roof whatever they need to do, engine tests, warm-up tests, whatever, and the satellites can't see it. So that's what they do. And
So I saw something where you talking about how they're always 20, 30 years ahead because that's kind of when information starts trickling out. So right now, what is your opinion of what they're working on? Are they working on radar jamming equipment? Are they working on drones? Or are they working on manless flight? What do you think that they're working on?
all of the above. They work on new radar systems. It's always, playing catch up. We develop a system, be it a radar or stealth or whatever it is. The Russians and the Chinese develop something that is able to negate our new capability. Then we develop something that makes our capability better. Let's say a radar system. So we develop a stealth fighter. The Russians develop better radar that can pick up our stealth fighter. So we got to have a better stealth fighter that is stealthier and can be picked up. So the Russians build a better radar system and so forth. It's always a back and forth.
One thing I saw on your website, dreamlandresorts.com, was just fantastic, was that they have built Russian radar inside Area 51 to see how the evasion techniques actually work. So you might have planes that are not even stationed at Area 51 just flying by to see how they evade the radar. Tell me a little bit about this, because I thought that was just fascinating that the Americans are building Russian equipment to see how they can get by it.
Yeah, that's really a thing that a lot of people don't realize. You can see them right by the back gate. If you go down to the back gate where a lot of tourists go, you can see about a mile or two inside the fence line, you can see some radar systems. And people see, okay, well, radar systems, Area 51 makes sense. What they don't realize that those are Russian radar sites. And yes, like you said, they use our new fighter jets to see how well the Russian radar sites can pick us up. And of course, the idea is that they don't pick us up, then we're good enough. And we actually have regularly, we have B2 out of Whiteman Air Force Base coming over here. After they had some work done or whatever, they fly over the radar sites to get recertified to make sure that their stealth capabilities are still intact.
Wow.
And of course, the new stuff.
Amazing.
It's absolutely, it's a cat and mouse game, and it is amazing. What we can see here by the back gate is only a fraction of the radar systems that they have behind the groom range. There's a whole empty valley north of Area 51, and that's where they have the really cool Russian radar sites that somehow we got in our hands. I don't know if money exchanged hands or if it was who knows. We got them. And we put them up there. We see how they work. We test them out. We fly our stuff against them. And the idea, and I'm sure the Russians do the same thing. I'm sure there is somewhere in Area 51 in Russia where they do the exact same thing in reverse. So it's always a cat and mouse game. And I hope that, back in the days, to give you an example why the secrecy is so important, when the F-117 stealth fighter was developed in the 1970s and early 1980s, it was very secret at Area 51, later at Tonopah Test Range, and then came the Gulf War, and we had it, and it was a huge win for us. Nobody knew exactly how it worked, and it won the war for us. So that's why we need to have these secret things, and we don't have a problem with it. We think it's great. We're just a bunch of curious geeks on a website, and we want to take a little peek at what's going on there.
Yeah, you look at the advancement of technology, America for the most part owns the night. When we went into Kuwait and Iraq the first time and the second time, we went at night. When Russia went into Ukraine, they went during the day, and that told you everything you need to know about their capabilities because they don't own the night. So that's when you talk about the technological advantage. There's about approximately $50 billion spent out of the $700 billion that goes out into the military budget for black op type operations. Uh, in your view, I saw an interview you did where you talked about the president had visited there, that he probably didn't find out everything that's going on there. The military pretty much runs this by itself, is what it sounds like, right? And that $50 billion just kind of goes into, it's a black ops is the name, but it kind of goes into a black hole where they just kind of spend it, and there's not really a lot of cause and effect as where they spend this money, right?
That's correct. There's very little accountability. And even the president, people always ask me all the time, well, can the president go in there? If he wakes up one morning and says, okay, I want to go into Area 51, not a chance. If they want money, if they want funding, or if there's anything to show for, then he gets to go in there, but he doesn't get to see everything. It's not like he gets to a tour of all the hangars and they show him everything. He sees exactly what he needs to see. So in essence, need to know also applies to the American president.
That is amazing.
That just throws me a loop and a half. I figured the president could walk in anywhere he wanted. So the military is that powerful where they can control the president on military land.
I think it's understood when it's not. I don't think there's any one person who has full control over what's going on there.
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah,
yeah, that's safe to say.
And that includes the president. If the president needs to know about one project or funding is required and the president needs to sign for it, then he gets to see that one project, but not a bit more. Everything else is tucked away in hangars.
Yeah, like the stealth there. The president who was it? Be Clinton to finance it. He could go in there and see the stealth all he wanted, right?
That's correct.
But not beyond that hangar.
No, he gets to see exactly, and sometimes I can even hear it on the radio scanner. I'm listening to the frequencies of Area 51 and what's going on there. And every once in a while, I can see there is a little flyby, a little show and tell when they do a little showing off for somebody high up. I don't know if it's a president or if it's somebody else high up in the hierarchy, but they do that. They put a show.
That's got to be amazing. I mean, you're sitting out in your backyard, and all of a sudden you see these outerly world things flying over your home there. That's got to be a little frightening too. But you know where you're living, and wow, it's you look up, it's just got to be an amazing feeling.
I look at it as my tax dollars at work.
I'm glad they're going somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. No, it's amazing. And, most of the really secret stuff, of course, flies at night where you can't really see. So we hear something at night and I'm turning my scanner on and I'm hearing comms. Of course, it's all coded. It's clear voice. I can listen to the voice, but what they say doesn't mean anything to me. Like they say, okay, test card 1, test card 2, test card 3, waypoint 1, waypoint 2. I don't know where those waypoints are, and I don't know what those test cards call for. But I can listen to it all, and after a while, you get a feel for you see,
The terminology.
yeah, for the terminology and for certain call signs, they
Yeah.
use call signs, and you know what certain call signs mean. And when I hear certain call signs like Sabre is a call sign for aircraft out of Area 51. So whenever I hear the call sign Sabre, I know that, hey, I better listen. There's something going on at the
Yeah.
base.
Yeah. What is the most amazing thing you've seen from your place?
One of the most amazing things, there's really several sightings that I had that are just absolutely amazing. One time I was up at Coyote Summit, not far from Rachel, and I'm sitting there to watch the war games, the aerial exercises, waiting for aircraft to come through the gap. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see a huge black shadow. And I'm looking over and I'm seeing this F-117 stealth fighter right next to me, flying almost at ground level right through the gap. And
Wow.
I mean, that thing is just, and I whipped my camera around. I think I got its tail, and then the second guy came along, and I got some really good photos that I have on my
Wow.
website. But they were just giving me a show. They were coming right by, and you don't hear them coming. I saw them out of the corner of my eye before I heard the engine. It was just amazing. I mean, they were right on top of me.
You
And
mentioned the
another,
security about Area 51. Tell me about Janet Airways. You know, it's to me that is such an incredible story about how they get. I guess they started in 1972, is what I read at least. I don't know how they got them there before that. I'd be interested in knowing that as well. But they take them by air to Area 51 from a separate terminal at McCarran Airport in Vegas, right?
that's correct. There's a terminal on the west side of McCarran, ironically not very far away from the strip and from all the tourist
Yeah.
hustle and bustle. And in the mornings they pull in there, employees pull in there in the huge parking lot, about 1,500 to 2,000 parking spots, and that parking lot fills up. These people get in the terminal, get on 737 planes that operate under the call sign Janet, and they fly to Area 51. Few people don't know that, and tourists see these planes white with a red stripe. You can't miss them.
Mm-hmm.
In the mornings, they fly out of Area 51 nonstop, and they fly up to Area 51, bringing employees to the base. They have the option of staying on base. So, people that don't want to spend a lot of time flying back and forth, they just stay on base during the week and come home on Thursdays. Usually, they usually work 4/10s, so they usually come home Thursdays. And these planes fly. You can track them on flight tracking websites, and you can see they fly right into the ranges. And most of them, go to Area 51. Some of them go the other direction to Tonopah Test Range, and you can track them almost to the ground, to where they land at Area 51.
Do they still have the windows, or did they ever? I read that they did. The windows blacked out.
That's a little bit of an urban myth. The reason the windows are blacked out is because when they go to work and when they come home, they usually try to get a little nap in, and they just pull down the shades on the windows.
So the windows are not actually blacked out by the airline itself.
No, you can go on my website and look at photos of the Janets. I got plenty of photos of the Janets, and you can see some of the shades are open, some of them are closed. It's just, the guys it's about a half an hour flight, so they try to get a nap in on the way to work. So that's why the shades are drawn. It's the same thing.
You mentioned urban legend. How hard is it on your website to shake these urban legends from the truth? Because some of them ring so true, Yeah.
Well, I try to point out the urban legends, and mark them as such on my website. I'm sure there is some misinformation or wrong information that falls through the cracks, but I try to vet the information on my website, and I try to sort it out as good as I can and point out urban legends like this. Talking about blacked out windows, there's also a bus that goes into the base from nearby communities around here that brings workers into the base by bus. And there's this urban legend that the bus has blacked out windows. I've taken pictures of the bus. It has very dark tinted windows, So it's hard to see the people inside, but they are not blacked out. And if you get close enough, you can see the people inside.
So
And
there are must. Oh,
one
go
thing on
ahead,
your
Joe.
website, dreamlandresorts.com, is you do it debunking urban legends. You do a
Yeah.
wonderful job there talking about Bob Lazar, who made all types of news and all types of stories about aliens and all kinds of different things. And you did a wonderful job of just systematically going through it and explaining that there's a lot of things missing here in his resume.
Yeah, that's actually an article that someone else wrote very early on and gave me to use on my website. It really goes in great detail and shows a lot of inconsistencies with Razar's story. I'm on the fence whether he really just came up with a good story or whether he really thinks he saw and did what he says he did and saw. I wouldn't completely discount the fact that he might have been implanted some bad memories
Okay.
because he is very good with his story. I mean, he's consistent.
Right.
He has the same story every time he tells it, and sometimes when he doesn't know the answer, he just says that wasn't my area of expertise. I don't know, and that's exactly if you really work on a project that is compartmentalized. That's exactly what happens. You have areas that just were not in your expertise, and you don't know anything about it. So he has a really good, very convincing stories. But then when you a really good, convincing story, but when you look a little deeper, there's a lot of holes in it. And I know for a fact when you look at these things that his story is not exactly as he tells it. What is true and what isn't, that's anybody's up to anybody's interpretation.
Yeah, and I would urge everybody to go on dreamlandresorts.com and check that out because it's very interesting to see the history of it, and then you can make up your mind for yourself. One reason I believe that, for one, I think it happened, but one reason I believe that the moon landing was real was because you would have the biggest cover up in the history of the world. Somebody would tell somebody. I don't understand how you've had, well, I guess, thousands of employees at Area 51, and very few have ever come out and said anything. How do they keep that shroud of secrecy? Is it all just NDAs and threats, and we're going to put a felony on you if you do?
Well, not so that also, but that is not the primary thing. They select the people that get to work at Area 51 very carefully. They do background checks before you even get to work there. They come to you, whether you're military or civilian, they come to you and they're going to say, well, we have a job for you. We can't tell you what it is. We can't tell you where it is. You can't tell anyone about it. Do you want it? Yes or no? And then you may have a day or two to say yes or no. But by that time, they have already looked into your past. They already know more about you than you probably know about yourself. And they know that you're trustworthy, that there's no gambling debt, that there's nothing that anybody could hold against you all over your head. And these people that I know that have worked at Area 51, I know for a fact that even their wives and their children did not know where dad would go to work every Monday. They had no idea.
Wow.
My good friend T.D. Barnes, he is one of the roadrunners. He worked at Area 51 in the 1960s. Great guy. We're good friends. And yet he always, every once in a while, he surprises me with a new story. And I'm asking him, you never told me this before. Well, I couldn't. It's just recently been declassified. So, and even his wife didn't know where he would go. Like we get together regularly for dinner or whatever, and his wife didn't know where he went to work. They would go out with his co-workers in their spare time. They would hang out, drive boats on the lake, but never talk about work. And the wives did not know where they go to work. These guys were not the type that shoot off their mouth about what they do. They select them very, very carefully. And another incentive is, it's not like anybody says, well, if you talk, we're going to come and shoot you. That's not how it works. But you're getting a military pension. And if you talk, your pension goes away.
Right.
Sure.
So, that's a good reason not to talk.
That's a very good incentive to keep
That's a great reason.
Besides, and I really don't want to miss that fact. Besides the fact that these guys are all American patriots,
That's
they wouldn't,
amazing.
they wouldn't talk, even if they wanted to, and if they could, they wouldn't.
That's an amazing thing because most people, if they have something in news, they're just going to tell you. Eventually something's going to come out. It's just an amazing fact that you've had thousands and thousands of employees that go there, and none are coming out and telling, "Here's what we did. Here's what's going on." It's a shroud of secrecy. That's an amazing thing, which is actually a very redeeming thing. You feel good about that. There are people like this still in the world that are doing this.
That it is like a brotherhood of these people. They won't talk about anything, and when they talk among themselves, they might divulge a little more. But when they talk to outsiders like me, they wouldn't say anything, and it's just absolutely amazing. I always say those that go out and talk about Area 51 know nothing about it, and those that know about Area 51 won't talk about it.
Wow.
That's how it works.
And one thing that happened with you was your two homes were both raided by the FBI. And from what I've read and seen of your interviews, you still don't know exactly what happened or what you did, right?
I don't. It happened. It happened in November.
And you haven't been charged, correct?
No, I haven't been charged with anything. It happened a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And to this day, I have not been charged, and I don't expect to be charged. I can't even get a hold of anyone to tell me what they took. $20,000 worth of my equipment, 4 computers, my drone, my camera, a lot of gear, well over $20,000 worth of equipment. They caused $7,000 worth of damage in my homes, kicking in several doors, destroying furniture in my homes. I mean, they went to town in here. You wouldn't believe it. And okay, I should probably tell a little bit about how this happened, just very briefly. My girlfriend happened to be in the house in Las Vegas. I happened to be up here in Rachel. And I woke up to shouting and banging and basically shouting, "Joerg Arnu, this is the FBI. We have a search warrant." And I'm waking up and they are in my house. This is bad. So I go out there. I look at guns drawn, machine guns pointed or machine pistols pointed at me, a riot shield. People
about how many agents were invading your home?
I don't think I've ever seen that many people in my hallway. My hallway, I couldn't tell you exactly how many.
And these guys were in full riot gear, right?
Full riot gear, probably about 4 or 6 people in my hallway. And all in all, on my property, there was probably about a dozen or 18 people with probably about 6 vehicles, all black SUVs, one personnel carrier, one large armored personnel carrier. These people put me in handcuffs and drag me out of my own house. That does something to you when somebody drags you out of your own house where you feel safe. So they dragged me out of my house in handcuffs, put me.
You weren't resisting, obviously, either. They just physically drug you out of your house, though.
I wasn't resisting. I was just reacting. I was still waking up, and I was still coming to grips with a very disorienting situation of these people in my home. I look at my door. The door was just in pieces, and I'm thinking, okay, this is really, really bad. So my first question I'm asking is, am I under arrest? And they say, we are detaining you, and where this goes from here depends on your cooperation. That was a lie. They didn't have a search. They didn't have an arrest warrant. They implied that they would arrest me. They couldn't have arrested me if they wanted. They didn't have an arrest warrant. They had a search warrant for my house because somebody lied to a federal judge.
Now, then a search warrant, it doesn't have to tell what they're searching for?
Yeah, anything that can contain data, like computers, hard drives, my drone. They even took a memory stick with some movies on it that I had on my TV. They even took that.
I hope they were legal movies.
They were. No worries. They were. But it's incredible the way they proceeded and interrogated me. And then at some point, I realized that my girlfriend in Las Vegas was also under attack from them.
Was this at the same time they were doing this? Your house in Vegas and your house in Rachel?
Yes, at the same exact time. So
Wow.
I said, okay, I'm not talking to you anymore. I need to talk to my girlfriend. I got to make sure that she's okay. So they, through one of their guys, called one of the guys in Las Vegas, and I got to talk to her very briefly to make sure that she's okay. Um, then they proceeded to search the house. As I later learned, she was also awoken by them smashing in the front door of our house, and she was dragged out in the street in her underwear. No, they didn't even give her a chance to put on some sweatpants or anything. So she was dragged out in her underwear on the street in full view of the neighbors.
Is this in a neighborhood?
In a neighborhood in Las Vegas,
Oh,
not gated, but in a master plan community in Las Vegas. So the houses are fairly close together, and I can only imagine what the neighbors, may have thought, what is happening here? You
got a kingpin living next to you.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and we posted something on our neighborhood app a few days later to let people know, hey, this is not a drug bust. Everything was a big mistake, and it was all good. But and nobody has really said anything. I mean, it's a good neighborhood. We know most of the neighbors, and it's all good. But anyway, so they are holding against me. Finally, after the interrogation was done, I got a few pages of the search warrant. What I got starts on page 39 or 40. So there's like 38 pages or 39 pages missing that I never received of the search warrant. But the few pages that I got say that I took pictures of military installation and I published pictures of military installation. That is what they're holding against me. So, those laws, those particular laws that they cite are on very, very shaky ground. And after this all happened, I talked to an attorney, and he said, if they will ever press charges on those paragraphs, we're going to take them apart in the air. They have no reason. There's absolutely those paragraphs, basically those laws are completely void of any reasoning. They are completely baseless. And if they want to charge me on those, go right ahead and charge me. I'm going to take them apart.
And you mentioned that one of the reasons this happened was because, and you got cut off a little bit, was so somebody had lied about what you had done, right?
Correct.
Right in the middle of a sentence.
I think somebody way up in the food chain of the military did not like what we are doing. My website, and there's other websites that do similar things, and I think they wanted to set basically a shot across the bow. It was like, okay, guys, back up. And they chose me to receive that shot because they know that I'm very outspoken. Somebody saw what's on my website. I don't know if it is a particular image. I really think it's accumulation of the information on my website and the time that I'm spending on it. They said, okay, well, this guy, we got to stop him. And whoever this was, I think it was a person. And I'm hoping that that person somehow gets that message that I know that it's one person way up there, and I know that person lied. I want to say that very clearly. That person lied to a federal judge. That is a crime. And if I can ever prove that, I'm going after that person. But
do you have an idea? Do you have an idea who that person is?
At this point, I do not. I have some ideas where to look for that person, but I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint that person. But if I ever find out who that is, I'm going after that person for lying to a federal judge, because they came to me, and one of the first things they asked me is, are there any booby traps on my property?
Oh, wow.
I'm a retired software guy. What the hell do you think? What do you think I am?
I think you're John Rambo.
Yeah. So whoever this was, gave them the totally wrong impression about me. And anybody who knows me, I am not a violent guy. Nothing could be further from my mind than putting booby traps on my property.
Right.
Let alone the fact that I never thought I would need them. I mean, if you would have come to me the day before this raid and would have told me that this can happen to an American civilian who has done nothing wrong, I would have said, you're crazy. I would have never thought this. I never saw this coming. I would have never thought this is possible, but it happened. And you can go to, I actually, besides my dreamlandresort.com website, I also operate a website now that is called Area 51 FBIRaid.com. It's linked to my Dreamland Resort website, and on that website there's everything I have, all the documents I have, all the sequence of events. It's all documented on that website. I have nothing to hide. The FBI won't talk to me, and they won't talk to the media. Media requests are being denied from the FBI. So apparently they have something to hide. I don't. So I put that witebsite up there.
You say you can't believe this happened. That's because it's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's not supposed to happen.
It sounds like it was just an intimidation by somebody that knew that there was going to be no accountability for doing something that they shouldn't do.
That's correct. That person feels very secure and very safe in his position. And I probably never will find out who it is, but if I ever do, I'm going after him full force.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you. So Area 51 now, it's so hard because you're finding out things. It's kind of like looking at the stars. You're actually looking at history. You're not looking at what is currently there, because by the time the light gets to you, by the time the light gets to you from Area 51, a lot of times it's 20 years back. Where does Area 51 go from here, do you think?
It's already gone there. Good
answer.
What I mean by that is what we consider state of the art is stuff that they played at Area 51 with 20 years ago. They already work on the future. And, one of those projects, Area 51 is not going anywhere to begin with. People always say, well, they're moving projects or to Green River or to this and that. No, they're not. Area 51 is such a perfect location, even with all the tourism out here and everything. They have a base with all the infrastructure. They can't even build this anywhere else, so it's not going anywhere. It is going to be here probably till the day I die. And what are they playing with? Stuff that keeps our country safe. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the smart people working at Area 51 that work on that stuff and that develop that stuff. And I hope it's good enough, and I trust it's good enough to keep us safe.
And in your knowledge, is there an Area 51 like in Germany or Russia or China where they're doing this type of work?
I don't know of any Area 51 in Germany. There are certain areas where they're doing tests, but it's not anywhere near as secure as Area 51. I think they have some areas in Russia. It's not my area of expertise. I couldn't tell you much about them, but there are areas in Russia and in China, especially in China and Russia also. In dictatorships, it's much easier to keep these things secret. Somebody like me would have been dealt with in a very different way in Russia or China, trying to spy on their bases. Or I'm not spying, I take that back, trying to get a glimpse of what's going on, curious about what's going on.
Yeah, correct, that spying.
So but people always hold against me. They say, you're helping the Chinese or you're helping the Russians spy on Area 51. Honestly, if the Russians have to rely on my website for information,
no kidding,
man,
they're behind.
They're doing something wrong.
What companies are working with? Is it all organic, or is it Lockheed and these companies, Boeing, that are working with Area 51?
Yeah, there's really three big players. There's Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. Those are the big players. They have large facilities in a facility called Plant 42 in Palmdale in California near Edwards Air Force Base, where they develop stuff, and then it's brought up here, just like it was in the days of the A-12 and the U-2. It's a very historic symbiotic relationship, if you will, between Area 51 and Plant 42. Area 51 basically gets the stuff to test that is being developed at Plant 42. And the big players there are Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman. A big project right now you're asking about the future of Area 51, a project that will be revealed many years from now that they are playing with right now at Area 51 is a project called the Next Generation Air Dominance Project that gives us, as the name says, air dominance in the future. It's basically a fighter jet that can fly manned or unmanned, controlled by AI, that is surrounded by by a bunch of drones that are flown by AI, and that fighter jet controls the drones. So it's almost like a shield, if you will. The drones form a shield around the fighter jet, and if the fighter jet says the pilot, drone one, there's a target on the ground, there it is, take it out. Drone one goes, takes the target out while the fighter jet already takes on the next mission. And somebody's in pursuit, drone two, somebody's chasing me, take him out. Drone two goes and takes out the adversary that's chasing him. That's the big thing right now. And there's a lot more to it, that these drones have the capabilities of recognizing threats. AI is the big thing at Area 51 right now.
Yeah.
And another big thing is secure communications, because we communicate a lot more based on data. We have a lot more data communication, and we got to make sure that it's secure versus secure towards hacking from our adversaries. There was a project at Area 51 actually years ago, in the early, it was around 2005, 2006-ish, that only recently came to light, that the researchers at Area 51 were working on ways to infiltrate, to basically induce malware into Russian radar sites, into the data stream of Russian radar sites, and to basically give them a virus. And apparently successfully finish that project. It's only very recently came to light that, and it's still not acknowledged. It's something that is being talked about on the internet. You know, that's the kind of stuff, the spooky stuff that they
Right. When we see the stuff happen, you know, it's like during the Cold War when you'd catch a Russian spy here, you know, in somewhere in, you know, like in DC or somewhere else in the country, you go, I can't believe they have spies. Oh, by the way, can we get our two back?
Yeah.
You know, you have a spy exchange.
We'll trade you. We'll trade you your one for our
how
two.
dare you guys spy on us? Yeah. Can we have ours back?
Yeah, that's how it works. And you know, that's always, we gotta, okay, we have an Area 51, they have an Area 51. And as much as we believe that we're doing the right thing, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Russia working at their Area 51 that
Sure.
think that they are doing the right thing. So they are just as smart as we are. And to a certain degree, I acknowledge and I appreciate the fact that there has to be a lot of funding going into these projects. Is there abuse? Probably, but you know, we gotta stay one step ahead.
Sure. Is there any, before we go, is there any fallout from, you know, the nuclear testing site was right near there, 828 underground nuclear tests, a total of 928 total was at least what I saw on the website. Is there any fallout from that, from testing almost 1,000 nuclear bombs there in Nevada?
As far as we can tell, we don't have any issues with that here in Rachel. There are monitoring stations all the way around the Nevada test site, what used to be the nuclear test site. There are groundwater and air radiation test sites that constantly monitor radiation. Every once in a while, one of those sites all of a sudden spikes. Nobody knows really why, but so far I don't see any, you know, significant amount of radiation leaking out. Inside the Nevada test site, though, there are areas that are contaminated for thousands and thousands of years. That, you know, it's all part of the restricted area, but the personnel that works there even can't go there without radiation suits and this and that to protect them. So I don't think at this point we can really say what this is going to do to our groundwater in 1,000 years. There may be at some point groundwater leaking out, as it is right now, I don't see any effects on, communities around the base. And I don't think that uh, there's a lot of monitoring being done for just that reason.
Right.
That monitoring is going to have to be done for thousands and thousands of years, though. And we clearly left our children and their children and generations to come something that they have to deal with and that they probably shake their head about and say, what were these people thinking back then?
Right. Right. And one more question before you go. You've been so generous with your time. I got to ask you questions all day. Area 52, I was reading just a little bit. How does that fit into Area 51?
All right. Area 52. Some people jokingly say, well, is there an Area 52? Yes, there is actually an Area 52, and it's called Tonopah Test Range. That is another really interesting facility, also part of the Nevada Test and Training Range. That Area 51 is a part of. We got TTR up here, and it's a little less secretive than Area 51. So, like back in the days of the F-117, once the F-117 were reasonably airworthy and tested, they moved to Tonopah Test Range to train pilots on them and to get them ready for combat and to find out tactics to use with them, how to employ them. So a lot of projects move from Area 51 to TTR when they are sort of ready to do operational testing on them.
Right.
It's high security also, and my website actually has a whole section dedicated to Tonopah Test Range.
Right.
With satellite photos and rather with ground level photos, panorama photos that somebody took. A good friend of mine who comes to the ranges a couple of times a year takes panorama photos, and that's another thing. You can take these photos from public land all day long without there being any repercussions. It's all perfectly legal. Google Earth has better photos than anyone can take from ground.
Right.
So yeah, Tonopah Test Range, Area 52. An interesting place. I'm monitoring on my scanner all day long, Area 51 and also Tonopah, what's going on up there. Very interesting place. It's been a lot of money that's been put into Tonopah Test Range in the recent years. A lot of construction going on there. The runway has been completely redone. There's a lot of stuff that goes on at Tonopah that is, and even the town of Tonopah, basically Tonopah Test Range is the bread maker, the breadwinner for Tonopah. Everybody in Tonopah works at Tonopah Test Range.
Right.
And all of a sudden you can see that businesses are opening in Tonopah, shops are opening, boutiques are opening, there's money coming in. So that means there's big projects going on at TTR right now. People make a lot of money there.
Yeah. When you're on the scanner, have you ever been jammed on the scanner?
Yeah, it's not like they're jamming me, but I'm hearing when they're doing jamming for the military exercises. Yeah, I'm hearing the jamming. Basically, not only my scanner goes dead, but our internet goes dead because they are not only jamming the planes, but they are jamming our internet.
Yeah,
right. Regularly, when we hear flying and they do these exercises, phone lines go dead, cell phone goes dead, internet goes dead, everything goes dead. We are completely incommunicado for a while.
Wow.
That's life in Rachel.
Yeah. Well, Joerg, thank you so much for joining us. Dreamlandresorts.com is the website. We've mentioned it several times. Just a wonderful website, but what an incredible story you've got of following Area 51. You've chronicled it so well, and you're so articulate in the way you describe the events and the things that are going on there. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure for me and Jerry to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me on the show and give me the opportunity to talk about all these things. It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you, sir.